Well, the third largest state economy with a contribution of more than 8% to the country's GDP, one of the top states when it comes to attracting FDI inflows, and the second largest state when it comes to GST collections, and of course the tech capital of the country. There are many strengths that Karnataka can count, but equal are the number of challenges when it comes to ease of doing business and developing this growth agenda for the years to come. Now, whether it is complex regulations, bureaucracy, or infrastructure gaps and skill shortages, there are many obstacles for the state to overcome to achieve its target of becoming a trillion-dollar economy. So today, ahead of the state assembly elections, we have with us a set of experts from corporate India to help us understand what India Inc. needs when it comes to ease of doing business and more business-friendly policies from the state government. So join me in welcoming, first of all, we have Mr. Ullas Kamath, who is the chairman of FICCI Karnataka State Council. We have Sindhu Gangadharan, who is the MD of SAP Labs India. On my left is Mr. Abhishek Kapoor, who is the CEO of Puravankara Limited. On my right side again, Mr. Ajit, Issac, who is the chairman of Quess Corp. And we have with us Mr. Gopal, Reddy, who is the president, Federation of Karnataka Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Sindhu and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time here on CNBC TV18. And Mr. Kamath, since you represent the industry's voice, I'll start with you if you could lay the context for us in terms of the economy of Karnataka and what are its unique challenges. For instance, it is very much a services-driven state with 66% coming from there, but the workforce reliance is not proportionate. We have more than 41% reliance on agriculture, which contributes about 13-14% only. And we're also trying to be now a manufacturing hub. So what would you say are some of the key challenges and some of the key opportunities that the state of Karnataka presents?
Thank you very much. I talk about the opportunity. See, Karnataka is undoubtedly one of the fastest growing state in the country. Right now we are growing at 13.7%, and that's the CAGR of the last 5 years. And if we grow business as usual, we'll be about 800 billion, but if we grow at 17%, we'll be a $1 trillion economy by 31-32. It's not a big task, and you see from the industry perspective. Yeah. The second one, which is more important for us, is the dependency on agriculture, as you rightly stated, is 41%, but 14.3% GSDP is coming from agriculture. 19.5% is come from industry, which is slightly on the lower side, but predominantly it is 65% from the services. Yes. While we want to encourage IT, BT as much as possible, I mean, Karnataka is known for that, but also we need to focus more on manufacturing, which is what historically Karnataka is all about. If you see the 60s, 70s, 80s, we are all manufacturing excellence companies are all from South and basically from Karnataka. So my recommendation personally and also from the industry representation is to focus beyond Bangalore and focus on manufacturing and use technology for agriculture, because average holding in Karnataka of agriculture is less than 2 acres. That's very, very small. And also there are plenty of unused land by the government, which is called the wasteland, which can be utilized today's context for agriculture purpose, and 15,000 acres of industrial land is available now with the land bank. It can be completely got into, get into plug and play mode. So lots to do. As we go, we can speak about it.
Yes, Mr. Kamath, thank you for sort of laying the background to this conversation. Many threads there, but I'll pick on manufacturing to start with. And Mr. Reddy, if you could come in on this. For instance, we saw a record number of amendments to the Factories Act for Karnataka to be able to attract Foxconn to come and invest in the state, but at the same time, we've lost out some of the large investments in, say, EV to our neighboring states of Tamil Nadu. So, if you were to sum it up really as one of the top 2-3 highlights, what are the biggest hindrances of doing business in Karnataka, and what are the biggest pluses? Because we still see a lot of tech, we see real estate, we're seeing industries across to still come and set up base here.
One thing we should know that Karnataka is already developed in a little bit, about 50% is already developed in the industrial area. Compared to any other states like Andhra Pradesh, it is still developing. They may give a lot of incentives for the industries to come over there, but Karnataka, it can't give that much of incentives for any new industry. And see, basically infrastructure is the main important. The connectivity for the port, that is the main important for the huge industries. Whereas from Ballari to Bangalore, there should be an infrastructural development The road connectivity should be there to develop North Karnataka.
Abhishek, let me bring you into the conversation because as Purvankar, who's not just present in Karnataka, of course the bulk of your operations are here, as someone who's also done business with multiple other state governments, what has been the experience, whether it's come to streamlining the entire process, obtaining necessary approvals, etc., to start building projects? What does Karnataka have the other states do not, and vice versa?
I think in terms of sanctions, taking projects live and approval turnaround time, I think there's a significant opportunity of improvement here. Being the IT capital of the country, I think we can really streamline the processes and therefore turn around the approvals and sanctions far quicker.
Yeah.
And this can cut across everything from the revenue records right till the sanctions of the project and eventually the possession of the project, right? So some of that clarity and proactive approach from the government would be really helpful. The other idea would be, proactive thinking in terms of understanding what is contributing today to the challenges of infrastructure, especially in terms of mobility and transportation in the city. And what happens is really, how do you integrate private development with the city's infrastructure and transportation? Another example would be, for example, you can look at both the issues, is car parking, right? One of the biggest challenges in Bangalore is car parking.
Yeah.
How do we incentivize private developers and how we make it easier? For example, you can today have in some of the other cities in the country, you have fully automated car park which are run by computers, right? And that makes it far more efficient, far better occupancy, and therefore lower costs and lesser traffic and parking on the roads. So, there are a lot of initiatives that the government can take proactively to make a big impact on the transportation piece especially.
All right, Sindhu, let me also get your initial comments because the IT sector really a shining example for the country, When it comes to software exports, for instance, Bangalore is one of the largest contributors, almost $65 billion from growing at 10 to 12% per annum. What are some of the state-level interventions that will help sustain this kind of growth of the IT industry for the state and therefore help the growth of the country?
Yeah, I think if I just look at some of the examples that were talked about earlier on, Ritu, like be it agriculture or manufacturing or real estate, one unifying area that cuts across all of these industries is technology, right? And that's the beauty of technology. Today, pretty much every industry out there is a tech industry, right? So tech is really where we can really make a dent into all of those areas that we talked about. And this is also the beauty of Bangalore, being the IT capital of India, the Silicon Valley of India. If we have to retain that how would you say, the title, one thing we definitely have to work on is really make sure that the infrastructure of the city, of the state has to match that IT stature, right?
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah.
And if you ask me, this also goes beyond the city of Bangalore because we really need to decongest Bangalore. We want to bring that tech innovation into the length and breadth of the state, right?
Yeah.
Because some of the areas like agriculture, we really need to go into some of the surrounding areas, how we leverage technology to drive those innovations.
But Sindhu, for SAP Labs only, for instance, your presence is in the state of Karnataka very much in Bangalore, your largest presence. What would it take for you to think beyond Bangalore, as some of your prominent centers in the state?
Let's take our second campus that's coming up right in Devanahalli, which is going
in
to
Bangalore.
Have in Bangalore, 15,000 new, it's still in Bangalore, but what we need to motivate our people to move to Devanahalli is the ecosystem around also needs to grow, right? So the satellite towns. So if you go into Devanahalli, we still need hospitals. We still need social infrastructure for our people to be totally motivated to stay closer to the airport. So the same applies to even the other satellite towns, right? If I go to Kalaburgi or Shimoga or any of the other satellite towns, the only way to decongest Bangalore is to make sure that these satellite towns also grow in every aspect, right?
I think Mr. Issac is the best person to address the issue of talent retention, not just from the infrastructure point of view, but even if you look at some of the statistics, your own Quess Corp report, for instance, says 75% of the employment is still in informal sectors. The unemployment among youth is far higher, even though the total unemployment rate for the state is much lower compared to other states. Youth face a bigger challenge. Where are the gaps in skilling, in education, which is leading to this kind of an outcome?
So let's look at the contours of the problem. we have about 66 million people in Karnataka, out of which about 40 to 45% is the working age population, which is about, let's say, 30 million people. In 30 million people, only 20% work in the formal sector. The rest of them work in the informal sector. So data is first insufficient in the informal sector. We don't know exactly how much is employment.
But the estimate is around 80%.
80%. But having said that, unemployment is among the lowest in Karnataka state. It's only about 2.7%, 2.4% versus a national average of 7.5%.
Yeah. So
in that sense, Karnataka is ahead of the rest of India. But the problem really lies in the fact that it's very Bangalore-centric employment. You know, we have 15-16 million people living in a greater Bangalore area, and the formalization of employment has happened more in urban centers than in informal centers. So one of the things that Karnataka needs to focus on is the MSME segment. There are 63 million MSMEs in India, and a significant number of them is Karnataka. We have the e-Mudra scheme, which has now been introduced by the government. You know, loans available from about, let's say, 50,000 upwards.
Collateral-free loans.
Collateral-free loans.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, we have about 500,000 MSMEs being initiated, and they employ between about 3 and 4 people each, we can create 2 million jobs. And if we have to go to what Ullas mentioned about getting to about about $1 trillion economy by 2031-32, we have to add about 5 million jobs by then. So to add 5 million jobs, MSMEs have to contribute at least about 2 million.
But Mr. Issac, where are the gaps in skilling? Because, you know, let's take, we're known as the tech capital of the state, right? I mean, there are lakhs of engineering graduates coming out of colleges in Karnataka every year. 60 to 70% of them not able to find employment, and that has been one of the key poll planks this time around as well in campaigning. If you see, where are the gaps in skilling that need to be addressed by the state?
You know, so there are 2-3 points in this. There are about 70,000 primary schools in India. In primary schools, it has about almost a 16 to 20% dropout rate. So at very early in the education value chain itself, people are falling away. And in the total education budget for the state, which is about, I think, about 38,000 crores, almost about 50 to 60% is for staff and administrative purposes. It is not going towards building solid infrastructure or, let's say, training teachers. We have a program at Quess which we run for building schools. So we are engaged with about, let's say, almost about 50 schools and 75,000 children. All the money goes into just rebuilding schools. The attendance per school went up from about 150 to about 230 per school, just by rebuilding infrastructure. So if we put more money into infrastructure development other than administrative and...
It's the same solution, whether it is kids or graduates.
One more point to what Isaac already mentioned, right? One is the infrastructure of the schools. The second thing is also to look at the curriculum, what's offered in the schools. Today, there is a huge opportunity to intervene and bring in new age skills right early on into the curriculum.
Well, hold your thoughts. We need to take a very short break, but don't go anywhere. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back to this Karnataka election special, where we're in conversation with experts from corporate India to understand what India Inc. wants ahead of the state assembly elections. Mr. Kamath, SMEs is one area he brought, of course, in a different capacity, but in terms of what's the state doing, whether infrastructure, credit support, specialized schemes, now, the schemes that he was talking about, Mudra, for instance, these are national level schemes. From the state level, what is the kind of intervention that is required? Because it solves a lot of issues, including one of the key ones for employment.
Yeah, we have submitted a detailed report on MSME to the government of Karnataka. All over the country, as you rightly said, that about 7 million MSMEs. Average, they employ 2 people. It's not a big number, average. And in Karnataka, we have about 6 lakh MSMEs, and average is 1.5, the job created by them. And most of them in the past, till the GST and demonetization, everything was unorganized because MSMEs work unorganized in an organized way pre-GST era. What we are recommending to the government, one, we need to have easy money accessibility for them. And just to give you the NPA, the largest companies in the country, their NPA rate is about 20%. And if you take
the sector NPA 20%?
Yes, big corporates, if you take, the NPAs are higher than the smallest. The tiny industries NPA is less than 8%. and the medium scale is about 15%. I'm talking including the COVID time. So the small and medium enterprises who take 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakhs, 10 lakh, they are not the people who are defaulted. Their rates are about 12 to 13%. So what we are recommending to the government is that NPA norm is same for everyone. But that has to be tweaked to the advantage of the MSMEs.
That's something that would fall under the purview of the regulator, for instance. NPA classification does not really
but the government has to support that. The government has to support that.
But what are the state level policies? You know, these are regulatory. Recognition of stressed assets, for instance, does not fall under their purview.
We are saying that you need to have MSME fund, maybe to start with 1,000 crore, and you can engage the MSMEs fund requirement in this intermediary period. And the biggest buyer of any business today is the government, and we need to earmark at least 15 to 25% of the business of the government should be given to the MSMEs. And the receivables are the biggest problem for MSME today. And there has to be, again, it's the government or the regulation, their money has to be paid within 15 days. Because they are stuck from both the sides, MSMEs. They take it on credit, they sell on credit, and their working capital management is very, very pathetic.
You're recommending something of a quota for MSMEs in procuring contracts? Or
absolutely, yeah. You need to support them. Is exactly what Mr. Issac was saying. That in 6 lakh MSMEs, if they create 10 jobs per MSME over a period of next 10 years, we are 1 trillion. So this investment is a must.
Mr. Reddy, what are your thoughts? I mean, do we need a quota for MSMEs?
MSME, they should regulations. They should ease down. Because see, whenever they go for any clearance in the government, it take a long period. So MSMEs should be given an opportunity to start early. Regulations and everything should be easy for. There should be 2 policies, one for MSME and one for large industries. Then automatically the MSME will come forward for investments and all those things.
Abhishek, let me come back to you about one of the issues that dominated headlines not so long back, and that was the Karnataka State Contractors Association making allegations, on national television, that sometimes they have to pay as much as 40%, 50% of the project value as commission, or rather, in other words, bribes, to be able to secure these projects from the government. Now, this is the State Association contractors saying this. I just wanted to understand from you honestly, I mean, is this just, the part and parcel of doing business in the state, or do you think there are ways to be able to cut this red tape, so to speak, in the state?
Look, I think the only way you can really cut this out, and that's what brings in efficiency in business.
What's been your experience? I mean, we've talked to the contractors.
So, my view on this is obviously it's a challenge in the state and in the country. And what can change is really technology and transparency. If you make everything technology driven and everything which has got timelines for approvals and everything which is system driven, then you cut it out in private organizations or public organizations. This is something which you fundamentally change by changing processes and systems. I mean, I'll give you an example. Today, transit oriented development is key to bring down the traffic problem, right? Now, how quickly can you approve it, how systematically can you do it will decide how well planned is the corporate development or the private development coming together in the city. But the speed has to be quick and has to be transparent and has to be technology driven.
So tech is the answer. So Sindhu, let me bring you in. I mean, what sort of policies are required to build a robust digital infrastructure for the state? And if you could give us examples, how can use of newer technologies like AI, blockchain, how can that transform the business landscape for a state like Karnataka?
Yeah, today if you look at some of the new age technologies, right? I mean, take AI or machine learning or generative models, large language models. There's a whole talk around ChatGPT and OpenAI. And there's a lot of fear as well in terms of how data is being used. And I think here the government can work very closely with the industry, very closely with the academia to also make sure that we take very deliberate decisions on how are we looking at ethical AI, how are we looking at data privacy, how are we looking at regulation of how data is being managed to train those large language models. And there's a lot that you don't need to just leave it to the corporates to decide, but come together, look at those core themes of where we want to focus on. And I have to tell you, the youth of today would just love to drive many of those in joint conversation with the government and really drive that kind of change. That's one thing. And if you look at some of those areas where technology is, I mean, Abhishek, you mentioned, right, transparency, the visibility of some of the KPIs that you're driving forward. How are the financial funds being invested in the different areas? I mean, if you give everybody that visibility and transparency, there is very less to err upon, right? And you just follow those, and that's where tech is the answer. There's no doubt to that.
Well, so let me just get concluding comments from everyone else as well, starting with you, with Mr. Reddy. If you were to list down your top 2 asks from the state government, your wish list, so to speak, to improve the ease of doing business in the state, what would those be?
Basically, all the policies are there. First, policy implementation, whichever...
Implement what you're saying,
Policies. Whichever policy is there, Karnataka has the policies. But implementation...
First state with the EV policy, starter policy...
Any policy. Karnataka is the first one to have a policy. But implementation level, that is lacking. They should have the will to implement all the policies in one stretch.
Okay, Mr. Issac?
So I would think 2 things can help. First is female workforce participation.
More diversity,
Post-COVID, it's dropped down to as low as maybe 20 to 23%. We have to get that back to about 30 to 35%. You can't have Karnataka reaching a $1 trillion economy with only one gender working. You got to have both.
Absolutely.
One is that. Second is you got to take out distractions. You got to, for example, in affirmative action, it has to be more economics-based and less community-based.
So, Abhishek, your top 2 asks from the state government, and what about, so far the election campaigning that has resonated with you?
So I think speed of execution of infrastructure and speed of using technology, reducing human interaction in approvals and sanctions. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. An example is income tax. Today, there is no income tax assessing officer. You apply, the system will process it. You don't need an engagement. The moment you take this human interaction away and drive it with process and technology, I think you'll streamline most of the challenge. And speed, speed of executing infrastructure. I mean, look at Hyderabad. Today, why has it become what it has become is the way they have gone about executing the infrastructure project. That's my biggest ask.
All right, Sindhu?
I think infrastructure continues to remain number 1 for me.
I mean, is it hurting India's, Karnataka's image as an IT capital?
I just want to build upon what Mr. Issac said, right? If you want to bring in more women into technology, I mean, the best way to do it is to go beyond Bangalore, right? To go into the surrounding tier 1, tier 2 towns and places where women can today work from anywhere, right? And that's the beauty of what post-COVID, the whole hybrid model has taught us. So I think that's one thing we really have to focus on, because that results in multiple things being addressed. The second thing, I want to go back to my point on more intervention at a much more earlier level in the education system. Bringing in coding, digital skills, right early on in the high school levels, right? It brings in more girls into tech, brings in more people who are equipped with tech that can support all the industries that we are talking about.
Right, Mr. Kamath, you have the final word on your wish list from the state government.
For me, Bangalore is the one which has to become a world city, world-class city, because wherever you go in the country, youth wants to come to Bangalore, and that you cannot stop them. And Bangalore is the place for every young to come here, so we need to fix that. Whatever the problems, little bit problem we have, we should fix that. And I'm an eternal optimist person. For me, the government will take very proactive decision in that. So secondly, the manufacturing, which is a little bit we are lost, focus, has to be beyond Bangalore. That's Hubli and Bangalore could be the destination for setting up massive manufacturing units. And Karnataka can be the producer for the country and also for the world. And lastly, tourism, which is very close to my heart. Karnataka has a coastline of 320 kilometers. Karnataka has heritage properties. Karnataka has a wildlife. Karnataka has gardens everywhere. Karnataka has everything, and also we are going to have 13 airports by 2029. With that in mind, I think, and also you can create massive jobs, as Isaac said, in tourism for our youth, and it can be a local people. So to that extent, our recommendation is to government that treat tourism as a game changer in this $1 trillion economy.
And we certainly hope they are taking note. Thank you very much, Sindhu, all of you gentlemen, for your time here on CNBC TV18. With that, we're going to wrap up this discussion. Thank you very much for watching. It's a goodbye from all of us.